Cache-Maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
I'm the bad cop with Daryl W4 and DeBear for the 149th episode of the GeoGearHeads. We talk about all sorts of things for geocachers, location-based gamers, and location tech enthusiasts. But today, we're focusing on the pocket queries function of geocaching.com. If you're joining us live through the Hangouts on air, you can click the Q&A button in the upper right to share your questions and tips, and to vote on the other questions asked by other live viewers. As this will be another topic that we can't possibly hit everything in a single show. So if you're listening to us recorded, please email geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com, or better yet, call those tips into the voicemail hotline at 206-350-3647 with any other tips, questions, subjects, thoughts, dreams for future shows.
Before we get into that discussion, we need to hit the question that we asked last week for the chance at that novel by Russ Atkinson. Hopefully I pronounced that right. It turns out that I made a little typo in the rundown, which Bad Cop then read, and made the question impossible to answer.
That simply shows, Daryl, that I'm a robot and have no original thoughts of my own. Much like Siri, only more lifelike.
Yeah, maybe we should change your name to what's that new one from Amazon, Alexis, or we'll just go with Hal. How's that?
I'm sorry, Daryl, I can't do that.
All right. Well, the question should have been about the 1 millionth active geocache in the U.S., and instead we made it impossible by asking what the 2 millionth active geocache is in the U.S., and, well, there isn't 2 million active geocaches in the U.S. yet.
If you don't have a TARDIS.
Well, this is true. This is true. If you have a TARDIS, I guess anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
There is a 1 millionth active geocache, as I mentioned before, and that was GC5CX8R, Daddy's Fishing Hole. Now, because of that mistake, we just dropped the names of anyone who emailed us about the question, whether making their best attempt to answer, and we got a lot of them who answered correctly, I might add, or to ask about the error. So all of those names just went into the drawing. But before we get to whom was drawn as the winner, Dave, would you tell us about the novel?
Certainly, and I'm a huge fan of this series. The novel is entitled Death Row and is the 4th book in the Cliff Knowles series by Russell Atkinson. And I'm really super jealous because I really wanted to win. But, yeah.
Well, we're excited to have him on an upcoming show to talk about ciphers, puzzles, data puzzles, and to thank him for donating this paperback version of Death Row. And that'll be going out to GeoCacher. That's Cacher with a K, because aren't we all geocachers? What you need to do, GeoCacher, is email us, geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com, with your postal address. And congratulations to GeoCacher. And you know what? There's going to be another question at the end of this show. So keep your ears tuned, because you'll have a chance to win another prize from coinsandpins.com.
And another prize, I'm sure, to make many other people jealous. But let's get into our discussion tonight about pocket queries. And most geocachers are familiar with pocket queries, which is a premium-only feature on geocaching.com, as being the way that you can download that GPX file to drop into GSAC or load into your GPSR or whatever. But really, it can be so much more than that. And that's really what we want to talk about tonight, is how to use the pocket queries functions for more than just downloading that GPX file. To start off, though, Mark of the OB podcast actually wrote me earlier today with a question that was shared in the Nottingham Geocachers Facebook forum. And whoever posted that asked, help appreciated and apologies if this has been asked before, but is it possible to do a pocket query that results in just showing the church micros?
The short answer, no. Not on geocaching.com at least. This is a better job for something more fancy and featureful like GSAC. I'm sure there's some other tools out there. However, if you do have a bookmark list of the church micros, you can build a pocket query out of that. And just for the interest of the listeners who don't know what the Church Micro series is, it's a series in the UK. It's over 6,000 caches across England, Scotland, and Wales, and they're put out by a myriad of geocachers, and they're all caches that are on or near churches. So hence Church Micros. And there actually is a list of the church micros, and they can be found at a URL, which I'll read quickly, www.15ddv.me.uk/geo/cm/index.html.
Got it. I was typing.
All
No,
right.
I didn't get it.
Now that actually kind of brings us into the three different types of pocket queries. There's the traditional pocket query that we're all used to, where you just go and create your pocket query, give it a center point, a state, whatever. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and you get your returned list back, whether it be compiling a GPX file or just to use as search. And this is really kind of what this is going to be key about today. Is you don't have to run that pocket query. You can just have it as like a saved search and like an advanced search feature. The second type of pocket query is the caches along a route, where it's going to take your route file and generate the pocket query from that. Now the last one is what Dave, you were just talking about. Any bookmark list that you can have access to can be converted into a pocket query. So if you're creating a series of caches, this is a great way to allow people to download a GPX file from geocaching.com, is give them a public bookmark list, and then they can create the pocket queries right from there.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of GeoTrails that will stick all of their caches for the GeoTrail in a bookmark list for that exact purpose. So it's just quick, easy grab and go.
Exactly. I have a bookmark list around here of just old caches. Being in the Northwest where geocaching started, there's a lot of old caches. Other people have kept that bookmark list up for me, and I toss it in there. And if I happen to think, you know what, got a free weekend, let's do a hike, I'm going to go for one of these old caches.
I do a similar thing with a bucket list of, as you hear about caches that you want to do around the world, I stuff those in a bookmark list, and then they're readily available. So normally when I go on trips, I'll consult that bookmark list and add it to the list of caches, throw it up on a map and see if any of the bucket caches are anywhere near where I'm going to be, so I can be sure to add those to the planned list of caches for the trip.
Nice idea. I like that.
Yeah, we've talked about using the bookmarks for a number of time-saving or sanity-saving cache selection ideas. And all it takes if you want to create a pocket query of that is go to the bottom of that list and you click on the Create Pocket Query button, and all of a sudden you have a pocket query that will give you very few options. Most of the time we have a whole bunch of different options, but if it's a bookmark list, all it's really doing is giving you the selection that can then be turned into a GPX file, or if you want to just preview it on a map, you can do that as well. And that's one thing that I really like to do, not necessarily for the bookmark files, but just in general. I'll create my saved pocket queries, which are just essentially the saved find requests, and I'll view those on the map. Now the way you do that is just from the pocket query page. You don't actually run it. You just leave it there. Don't check any of the days to run. Don't do anything with it. Just save it. You can go back to the listing, and then you have the two icons, one to preview the search and one to preview it on the map. So that way you get the geocaching.com maps with all of those caches in that pocket query right on there. So it's a really great, easy way to just skim through and see what you're looking at without having to go and create it and move out of geocaching.com.
Yes, exactly. Daryl, there's another option available that I have never used. I was curious if you have, or perhaps Dave, you have. There's a check mark that says run this query once and then delete it. You guys ever use that?
I actually use that quite frequently. How about you, Dave?
I have never used it. It never seemed to make sense why you'd want to delete it. When
Okay,
it's
here's where I use that most often. If I know I'm going to an event, I'll create a pocket query just for that event. So I run that pocket query once for the event, create my GPX file, and it's gone. I never have to deal with that again. And in that case, I'm just taking the GC number, dropping in the GC number as a center point, make whatever settings I want, and in some cases, I will actually just do my trick of save it, but don't actually execute, so I can go around and see what's in the area. But most of the time, it really is just a, hey, I'm going to this cache tomorrow, going to this event tomorrow, and I want to know what is in that area. So it just gives me a good, quick way to drop in that waypoint as my center point, pick 500 or 1,000 caches, then download that to my GPS or into the smartphone, because I can just download any of the pocket queries on the smartphone apps real quick and easy. So it's all cached and it saves me that time.
Nice. I hadn't considered that. Most of the times, if I'm running, I'll run queries for cities around me. So I want to keep those so they're available at least once a week.
All right, here's kind of an interesting comment from Limax. And he actually says, I've used new cache alerts when I was an FTF hound 2 summers ago, and my finds, and that's actually a fourth type of pocket query that we really haven't talked about. But he's using the my finds, and unfortunately, Google's hiding the question from me, so I can't see the full question anymore. But you can actually use the pocket queries to show you unfound caches. It's one of the options that you have. So one of those saved find requests, essentially, it's a pocket query, but I don't ever run the GPX off of it. It's just the settings that I have, and I can go and preview. So I have one pocket query designated that's for my home coordinates. It's caches I haven't found, and really I wouldn't have had to check that anyway. But it is enabled, and then it has the very important flag, have not been found, and this is under the that and section if you're creating your pocket query. So what that does is tells you which caches do not have any finds on it. So that's a great way to just quickly and easily go and see what caches are published. So I have that quick find request in there. I'll go in, hit the preview on map, and see what's showing up right around me.
And since there aren't that many unfound caches, you can set your radius on that incredibly high for miles or kilometers, whatever you're used to. Because your search results aren't going to come back anywhere near 500. Hopefully.
No, but what I tend to do for my own sanity is limit it to within like an hour's drive.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I keep going. There's caches there to be found.
Must find caches.
it does call to you, doesn't it?
Kansas.
Now, under those that and checkboxes on the form there, Dave, there was one that I think you said that you really wanted to be a little bit different, the found in last 7 days option.
Yeah. So that option will only show caches that have been found in the last 7 days, which often isn't enough. I really wish it was the last log was a found it log, because that's what I tend to care about when I'm looking at caches. I want to know if it was found last, or if it was DNF'd, or needs maintenance or whatever. So it'd be really nice to just check if it was found, if the last thing that happened to that cache was found, because oftentimes caches will go days, weeks, months, years sometimes before they're between finds. So that really cuts down on the number of caches that show up that could potentially be found, or
So, Dave, would you be happy if it was increased to 14 or say 30 days? Would that be better?
It'd be better, but it would still. There's always those outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be happy to say, as part of like the not, because I think they have a section for not. No, I guess I really don't.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, I could see something where the last, because if you just did the last log as a found log, you might have like an owner maintenance log that would trip that off. So it'd have to be like a double negative kind of thing, where the last log is not a DNF.
That could work as well, or it needs maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just the category of the last thing that happened to this cache is a positive thing as opposed to a negative thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be a great thing. And you can do some of that with the external tools. You can do a lot of that with the external tools. But we're talking today just about what you can do without leaving geocaching.com and the pocket queries, because this is a really useful tool that a lot of people just haven't really envisioned the use of that without creating the GPX files. It's amazing how many geocachers don't realize that that's what that, and even geocaching.com bills it as a premium feature as being saved searches or saved advanced searches or something to that effect. They're really trying to push this as more, it's a search feature that also happens to allow you to download caches. The primary function isn't to download the caches, which is what geocachers tend to think of it as being.
Yeah, I spend way more time playing with pocket queries on geocaching.com, and I only usually download the last thing. But I'll spend hours just creating GPX files on geocaching.com, not running them, just previewing them and looking at maps, using that to build up bookmark lists that I build other pocket queries on. Because one point to remember, I think, is when you generate a pocket query, you can only do one per day. Like of each individual pocket query, you can only generate it once per day. You can generate 10 different pocket queries a day, but each individual one can only be done once a day. So if you generate it once and realize, oh, I have to change it because I forgot to adjust something like the center point or whatever, you have to wait till the next day, which can really slow down cache planning. But if you keep everything in preview until it's right and then generate it, then you're much more likely to get the pocket query that you're actually looking for.
Well, that actually brings us to another really important function that a lot of people have missed in the pocket queries. You can actually copy an existing pocket query. So you can take one of the, kind of as your saving grace if you mess something up, which, no, I've never done this. No. No. If I accidentally submit it with like the wrong parameters, I'll go and make a copy of that, make my changes, save it, and then run it. So that's a really handy way to do it. But Limax in the Q&A also said that he's actually using the save searches to keep track of his progress on the fizzy grid and see what caches are near him. So I'm envisioning that one is using the difficulty and terrain rating. So let's say you wanted to actually go and build the entire fizzy grid. You can go and set that up in the first query, make the copy, and then change it for the next number and just progress through it that way.
The Jasmer challenge as well, which is based on caches placed on certain months of the year. You could do the same thing by making copies and adjusting the place between date and times for each month and build up the same set of pocket queries for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, really, really handy function, that having that copy. However, I will say that I've ended up with so many stray pocket queries in my list that way, so it does pay to clean up the list every so often because I've got so many in there now that I just don't know what's what sometimes as I go through the list.
Which
also names are very important.
I'm
but
going to say that. So,
yeah.
Names are very important. Name things so you know what they are. Plus, when you're generating the pocket query, it's very helpful at the very last checkbox is include name in the file name. I forget the exact wording, but basically adding the name, because otherwise, all you get back is a number for the pocket query. But if you add the name to it, then you actually get something that humans recognize. So when you're going through your big list of pocket queries that are on sitting on your hard drive, after you generated a bunch, you know which one is which.
Exactly.
It's saved me many times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I do seem to recall that those are not compatible with a couple of the older GPSs because they don't like the longer file names. So if that's the case, just change the name. I seriously I don't recommend not enabling that checkbox, because if you end up with a couple of pocket queries sitting there, you're going, which one's this? Well, just change the name, shorten it to, local and, drive or something, rather than big long name that you might have selected, because that really is going to be a huge help for you guys. Okay, we do have another comment in here from the live Q&A. Land Monkey says, as usual, really agree with Dave. Important point to not click a day to generate until you've test viewed the output of your Pocket Query. He also says, is the 1,000 cache in a Pocket Query limitation now simply artificially enforced by geocaching.com, since most GPSRs can handle way more than 1,000 waypoints/caches in a GPX file? Any indication why they will not allow that limit to increase?
Interesting.
It's definitely artificial.
Yes.
Whether or not it's intentional, because just computationally it's harder for them to generate more than that from their data set and their infrastructure that they have, I'm not sure, but it's definitely artificial, because I have loaded GPX files with 2,000 or 3,000 caches that were generated from the Android app Locus Pro, and it would work just fine on my GPS. So there's the 1,000 cache limit is a ground speak limit, not a hardware limit for these modern GPSs.
Yeah, there are some GPSs that are limited to even 500 caches, but most of them will do at least 1,000, especially now. So I think that's kind of why they chose that number. But anything over 500 caches, they wouldn't email, because that's exceeding the email limits, the file sizes for email. So there are some limits as to some technical reasons why they've done these limits. And I think really at this point the 1,000 is more about, that's a good balance between making them available to everyone who needs them and the server loads. But they have upped the number of queries that you can run every day, because it used to be that you could only run 5. Now you can actually run 10 Pocket Queries a day. So essentially you can get 10,000 geocaches a day out of geocaching.com if you max out every one of your Pocket Queries and you run every Pocket Query you can every day.
Which should be enough.
You would think.
Yeah, it should be. But I can definitely see why you wouldn't necessarily want 10,000 different Pocket Queries. You'd want, one Pocket Query with all 10,000. Now, okay, Cache Advance actually piped up, and this is actually a good point. I believe it was a contract with GeoMate Jr. that limited the Pocket Query size. And I've heard that before, that there is a contractual limitation that geocaching.com cannot spit out more than 1,000 geocaches to anyone but GeoMate Jr., because they had the contract for 250,000, I think it was.
Okay, well, there you go.
Well,
It's a limitation, but it's lawyers.
There you go. I thought it was a computation limit for the servers, which makes a lot of sense if you've got hundreds of people slamming it. But you get lawyers involved, and who knows why they set numbers.
Okay, Lee Max in the Q&A is saying that his GPS 12 would only do 500, but his Magellan 510 does 10,000.
That's much better.
Yeah.
And that's a full day of Pocket Queries right there.
Yeah, and there's some that will do 2,000. I think it was the Oregon 200 would do 2,000, but the 450s and up would do 5,000. But against the using the names, he says that he has 8 daily Pocket Queries that he uses, so he's memorized those numbers. Now, Cache Advance also said the contract, they believe, has expired with GeoMate, which I wouldn't be too surprised, since GeoMate is no longer owned by Atmosphere. It's now owned by someone else entirely, and we've interviewed them on the show, and I can't remember. I want to say Brand 42. Yes. It might be 44, but it's something, Brand something, and they're doing it. Tangent, however, said that he's sure that some part of the 1,000 cache limit is to make it more difficult for someone to download their cache database in bulk. Which that it was, I know, part of it originally, but I don't know that that necessarily is the case anymore.
What's the API limit? Because that would be a much easier way to scrape their database if you were.
Exactly. The API limit is much more substantial, and that would be the quicker, easier way to do it. And we have heard from some people who are doing some scraping type things with the API to make sure that they're getting all of the data they need for all of their users. But I'm going to check that real quick and see 10,000 caches per 24 hours with full detail. So it's actually about the same as you running the Pocket Queries.
Which is fair. If I can punt up the stack a bit, looking at the, I talked about using date ranges for limiting some caches for like the Jasmer challenge. Another thing that I like to use the date ranges for is if I'm going to an area, I will limit the Pocket Query, set it to just events, and limit it to the time that I will be in the area. That way I can get a quick view if there's any events where I'm going to be that I may wish to attend, and it filters out all the events that are outside of my date range, and just gives me the ones that are possibilities. And that's actually saved me back in the August 7 Sofa Challenge. I needed an event, and I happened to be in Canada for a week, and I was doing this road trip to grab them all, and I happened to do that exact Pocket Query, and one event popped up in my date range. So I made extra plans to attend, but it has come in handy several times.
All right, let's jump back real quick. Cash Advance is saying that it is Brand44 that now owns the GeoMate Junior, and JD has given me a little bit of a correction. API limit is 6,000, which he is correct. It's 6,000 full cache details, but 10,000 limited details, and I don't remember exactly what's in those limited ones, but it does include the location and the status. So it's not going to give you all of the description information, but I don't remember exactly what's missing from that.
So is that 10,000 total, 6,000 being full description, or is that like 16,000 total?
It would be 16,000. It depends on how the app is calling it. So the full cache information, a lot of the apps will call for only the updates with that partial information. Make sure it's open and not open kind of thing, unless you set it otherwise. So you really, JD is correct that you probably want to assume you get 6,000 caches a day through the API.
It's very realistic, yeah. And if you're looking at that many caches, you should be going online anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Land Monkey also wanted to know about GeoTours, and he asked, does every GeoTour have a list-based Pocket Query available for public use? That would be handy. Well, sort of is the answer, because it's really not quite the list. They have a download this GeoTour link that will give you the information that you need to download. But how that works is a little different. It doesn't really tie into the whole Pocket Query thing. They probably are doing a Pocket Query in the background, but it is actually just click this and download the GPX file. There's no extra options on there. It's just download it. And then JD said, I just let what GSAC lets me download. So that's probably where he's getting the 6,000, because I'm not sure that GSAC by default uses anything but the full. There are some update options which I'm sure would be using it. And then Limax also said, or Limax, trying to get Pocket Queries to overlap in order to get a good coverage of 10,000 a day can be tricky.
That was very hard.
Yeah, because the Pocket Query searches are, of course, circular. It's based on a radius from a start point. So that can be annoying, at least if you specify a center point.
I was just going to say that. There are the options for the states and provinces, so you can use that if that's what you're looking to do. And there are some tools online that will help you if you're trying to get all of the caches for your state by analyzing what the hide dates are and give you the date ranges so that you ensure that you're going to get as best coverage as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And after talking to a guest at one time, Daryl, I started doing that to get those cache details out and put them as points of interest into the GPS so I could have the entire state with me. And, it took a lot of work. The early years were easy, but then as the later years come along, it's, 2011 and on is really tough to get, all the caches just for my state in a series of pocket queries.
Yeah, some people keep those lists, and it's amazing to me how much work they go through.
Yeah.
I'm sure the upping the pocket query limit to 10 per day has certainly helped out that effort.
Well, in the old ones, they don't change all that often, so that's not a big deal. So, yes, but you can spend a lot of time going through and looking at the entire list of check marks to make sure you're running. It used to be 5, or now it's 10 per day, and making sure, okay, well, that one's going to run on these days, and this runs. It's a scheduling nightmare.
Yeah, now a little bit of a tip for those who might not know, you can actually hit those check boxes to turn them on and off from the list view.
Mm-hmm.
You can. I have noticed when I've done that that sometimes they stay checked after they've been generated. I guess depending on the page load time and how things have gone. So a week later, I've had pocket queries pop up when I've done that because it's generated once and then the check mark stayed checked and it generated again the next day or the next week.
Next week.
Well, that's probably the check boxes under the days to generate.
Yeah.
Because you have the uncheck the day of the week after the pocket query runs, which is what you're probably looking for. But the run this pocket query every week on the days checked, I believe, used to be the default. So if you're running with that and you check those boxes, it never gets unchecked when it runs because it assumes you want that run every week.
Yeah, but I've also had it because I always set it to uncheck after running once. But occasionally, if it's already run that day and you check it to run again, it's going to wait a week before it runs. So,
Right, because once it's run, you can't run it again that same day.
Exactly, so it defaults to the next week.
Correct. Yeah, you have to wait a 24-hour period.
Yeah, although checking those days a week, I've actually used that on road trips where I knew I was going to be, and I generate many pocket queries, usually one per day of where I'm going to be on a multi-leg road trip, and then I just checked the box of what day I was going to be there. So when I woke up in the morning, it already generated a pocket query of fresh caches for that day. So I usually generate all the pocket queries before I leave because you never know when you're going to have internet when you're on the road. And then every day it runs the pocket queries for that day so I can refresh those caches without me having to go through the process of logging on them and trying to generate them and wait for them to generate and then load them on. They're just kind of there magically.
Well, and that actually brings up an excellent point, too, about when do the pocket queries run. They don't start running until midnight Pacific time, because that's where the servers are, and that's what they've set as their start date. I'm sorry?
And that's just fine for me.
Yeah, but if you're in, like, Europe or in Australia, that might be a problem. So that's something to keep in mind. What I usually do, just to make sure that I get my pocket queries in time, is I always check the day before I want them and then the day that I actually want them. So that way I can always make sure I have the pocket query even if it doesn't run until I'm out of the house.
Yeah, if I know I need it on Friday, I make sure it runs on Thursday.
Exactly.
It's just easier to do that. Now, in the Q&A, LandMonkey says that pocket queries, and I agree, pocket queries alone are worth $30 US per year. The premium membership of geocaching.com.
Personally, I think they're worth way more than that, but don't tell Groundspeak.
Well, and that is the gateway that gets most of the premium members into the premium membership is getting those pocket queries.
Are you calling PQs a gateway drug?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Now, LandMonkey also says the world should revolve around Pacific time.
Obviously, it does, at least the geocaching world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we might have some listeners, possibly even in our Hangout or live Q&A tonight, who would disagree with him on that subject.
I'm sure, but they're wrong.
See, personally, I've always thought that it should revolve around UTC just because, well...
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about all the problems with European cachers who want a cache on a certain day and go ahead and log it, but it hits the servers here in America at Pacific time and actually logs it, on a different day.
Yeah.
So there are issues, but hey, you know what? For me, it works great. I have no complaints.
Well, and
Everybody moved to the, no, nobody moved to the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what I was saying.
well, apparently, Groundspeak is trying to, or well, geocaching.com is trying to re-architect a lot of the back end to allow for regional dates, and I don't know exactly how they're planning on doing, if it's going to be the time zone of the cache, but they are supposedly working on trying to get those date stamps for the fines to work that way. So I'm going to hope that we're going to see that, because it would be so much nicer.
Good. That's a really, really tricky problem to solve, though.
It is. Yes. And people think it's really easy, but that is one really tough nut to crack.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that kind of outlined the difficulties of dates for me was a Google engineer who worked on Calendar who commented that all days have 48 hours.
Excuse me?
Because it's Tuesday at some point in time in the world for 48 hours before it finally goes through all the time zones.
All right, we're getting a lot of postings agreeing with LandMonkey. Wet Coaster does. But JD also says, no argument from him on the time zones, and the premium membership is a great Christmas present.
Ooh, Christmas is coming.
Indeed.
Good stocking stuffers.
Can you still pick up the premium membership card, at REI?
It's been a while since I've seen them there, so I'm not sure you actually could.
Okay. I thought REI kind of pulled all their geocaching stuff. I heard that I think you can get them off. You still get them from geocaching.com, I assume, and Cache Advance used to sell them as well. I'm not sure if others do.
Yeah, I know Cache Advance had been selling those. I know that Space Coast had been selling them.
Yeah,
most
Cache
of the
Advance
retailers have those cards. But one of the nice things is with geocaching.com, you can just actually give a gift membership. You don't even need the card.
That's true, but at least you have something then to, stuff in a stocking.
Exactly.
It turns out just lack something, Hey, here you go. Look what I did for you. The kids go, oh, that, okay. Oh, it's geocaching, cool.
Well, that's the kind of thing that's really nice when you've forgotten a gift for your parents or someone that you wanted to give the gift to and realize, oh, tomorrow's their birthday. I need to get them a present. Well, they can use another year of premium membership.
Yep.
Yeah, another thing with premium membership is you can pay for years in advance, so you can always use it.
That's true. So that's a good point to bring up on premium membership. If if you ask for that and two people give it to you, it's not doubling that year. It's actually going for 2 years. So.
And I'm sure everyone listening to this show would be happy to get a free year of premium membership.
If you'd like to prove that it works, you're more than welcome to send me one.
Yeah. Send any test premium membership gifts to DeBear.
There you go.
He'll be happy to let you know that those worked right.
Well, absolutely.
Daryl, I gave you a premium membership gift because I just wanted to see if it worked. I'd never done it before. Had to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's always fun to play with that because it's just like, wow, look, nothing actually happened and suddenly you have a year. Oh, wait, but my bank account has $30 less.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
Or there's the option of paying through the app with your App Store credit, be that Windows, Google Play, or Apple's iTunes.
Yeah, and we played with that a little bit last year. The interesting thing is if you're going to update your membership through the apps, you have to wait about a month, I think, after the membership expires before we'll let you renew through the apps.
Exactly. They do give you that grace period to renew your membership. And so you can't renew it. I was doing it from iTunes last year. You couldn't renew it until that grace period had expired. And then once I was completely just a basic member, it went through with no problem.
Right. And the advantage to doing it that way, for those who might not be aware, is you can use the gift cards from like iTunes to do that. And I rarely find a time when I can't get a 10% discount on iTunes gift cards. So it's a way to essentially save some cash on the premium membership through geocaching.com.
And those are great birthday and Christmas gifts as well. Hint, hint.
Yeah, and I give so many of the iTunes and Play Store gift cards out in the holiday season because it was just so easy. You can you can get the geocaching premium memberships. You can go get premium apps like our favorite Geosphere, or on Android you can get CacheSense,
Or Locust Pro.
or Locust Pro, or GC Droid, who's going to be on the show in a few weeks. So there's all kinds of great things that you can get just by giving those gift cards. You're not really limited, but we're kind of getting away. White Coaster did say in the live Q&A, don't know if you said this while I was having supper. If you select a Pocket Query to run today, it will become available a few minutes later to download. And we did kind of touch on that a little bit, but the one caveat I will say, I've run into this many, many times where I'll have to wait 3 or 4 hours because I'm here in the Eastern time zone and I'm still waiting for the other queued Pocket Queries to complete. It is a queue, so whenever you drop into that queue depends on when you're going to get the Pocket Query. And in many cases on the busy weekends, I've seen it where it's like 3 or 4 in the afternoon and I'm still waiting on Pocket Queries I had set earlier in the day.
Interesting. Wow. Mine come through almost immediately.
Yeah, it depends, and they have upgraded the servers running the Pocket Queries, so your times are going to be better than they were even a couple of years ago. But keep in mind that if it's a busy weekend, like I'm assuming if you try this on like the International Geocaching Day weekends, you're going to have some issues with it.
Another thing to note, too, is the Pocket Queries won't generate when they're in maintenance mode. Every once in a while, they'll go to maintenance for a couple hours while they upgrade their servers or their software on the servers. So it's another kind of good reason to make sure that the Pocket Queries are generated with enough window to allow them to fix things and then generate your Pocket Query so it's ready for you.
All right, I'm looking through the live Q&A, and we've got some discussions in there, but I think with that we're going to pretty much wrap up this show on Pocket Queries. We've got a bunch of stuff we talked about here. Let us know what you've been using the Pocket Queries to do and how you make use of those cool functions, whether it be just to search or whatever, because Pocket Queries are very versatile, and I don't think people really have gotten a feel for just how much you can do without needing all of the extra software. Mm-hmm. Dave, before we wrap up, why don't you let people know where they can find out more about your going-ons?
Certainly. I am on Facebook, unfortunately. I am also on G+, under Dave Bearmaker, and my blog is Only Googlebot Reads This Blog, which is at debear.blogspot.com.
Now, we got a bunch of new shows coming up for you. Next week, we're going to be talking about puzzles. The week after, we're talking about camping. We've got Pete from the Amazons all the way over from the UK again. Then November 27th, which is Thanksgiving here in the U.S., is Randomize 29, and one of those guys who is babbling in the Q&A tonight, Land Monkeys, is going to be joining us because, well, he's Canadian. He doesn't care about U.S. Thanksgiving. He's going to be working that day. Then I mentioned earlier that we've got the author of GC Droid coming on the show. He's going to be on December 4th, so learn more about that Android app on December 4th for episode 153. Then in December 11th, episode 154 is Caching Nomads. We're going to have Peanuts and Pretzels back on, or Peanuts or Pretzels back on again to talk about running from the road and caching from the road. So that's going to be a really cool, exciting show, I'm sure. So drop us any feedback for any of those shows at 206-350-3647. Email us at geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com. But better yet, mark that stuff on your calendars and join us live for the recordings, and you can participate through the live Q&A as well.
Definitely. Now, in honor of Daryl's typo last week, we want to know the origin of the term bug. when talking about hardware or software defects. So get that email to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com with the title Question 150. Then, in the body of the email, tell us why those glitches in software and hardware are called bugs. Make sure you include your geocaching.com screen name, and if you answer correctly, you will be entered into a drawing for a prize from coinsandpins.com. But you must have that email to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com by 6 p.m. in the all-important Pacific time zone. By November 12th, that's 9 p.m. in the least important East Coast time, or 2 a.m. on the somewhat more important UTC. Now, that's December 17th out there for them.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Christoph Auer and Daryl Wanberg. The show is copyright 2014 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cachemaniac.